Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Happy Tuesday to you. We're going to continue with going into this Reasons Why Be Catholic by Patrick Madrid. And yesterday, this is talking about the history of our faith. And we left you with the question that he asked, which apparently many people ask. How do I make sense of all these seemingly conflicting aspects of Catholic history? Well, the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church is also suffused with great good works, establishing hospitals, orphanages, and other institutions to care for the poor, and selflessnesses, the countless monks, nuns, priests, and religious who devoted their lives to serving others. Catholic devotion to education is paramount. Innumerable universities, colleges, and schools were founded to bring the light of reason and literacy to all people, regardless of their religion or skin color. The good deeds done by selfless Catholics do not, and in and of themselves, prove the truth of the Catholic Church, though. Rather, these examples show the good that comes when people follow the teachings of the Catholic Church. No matter how evil the actions of a given Catholic may be, and no matter how many examples of wicked Catholics one might point to, they don't, in themselves, prove anything beyond the fact that there are bad Catholics. In fact, they are evidence of what happens when one disregards and fails to live according to Catholic teaching. The Church is filled with an unending series of extremes, good and evil, saints and sinners, successes and failures, triumphs and disasters, strengths and weaknesses. Though there is nowhere near enough space in this book to adequately plumb the depths of Catholic history, it is possible to accurately trace the outlines. Any global institution like the Catholic Church that has been in continual existence for 2 millennia is going to have a tremendously rich, complex, and even problematic history that cannot be properly understood, much less appreciated at a glance. Understanding Christian history on its own terms became a passionate pursuit for me. I had always had a keen interest in reading books about Catholic antiquity, especially the lives of the saints. But the older I got, the more interested I became in studying the broader sweep of Catholic history, including those episodes involving Catholics who were anything but saints. The more I dug into the rich, fascinating, and sometimes startling details of Catholic history, the deeper I wanted to dig. The colorful and enigmatic cast of Catholic characters and the accounts of their roles in the vast drama of the Church's sojourn on earth deepened my hunger to know the rest of the story. Even those who are familiar with the basic outline of Christian history sometimes have a historical blank spot, spanning the roughly 1,400 years that elapsed between the death of the last apostle John and 1517, when an Augustinian monk named Martin Luther burst onto the ecclesiastical scene and mobilized what would become the Protestant Reformation. I've asked many people over the years, what do you think happened in between the time of the Apostles and the Protestant Reformation? Answers vary. The Dark Ages, some respond vaguely with a shrug, and apparently not much interest in pursuing the matter further. Others say, that's not important. What really matters is reading the Bible and believing in Jesus now. not what people said or did 500 or 1,000 years ago. Luther and his bold new theology, the ecclesiastical equivalent of the mythical Helen of Troy, launched not 1,000 ships, but 1,000 Protestant denominations. The last 500 years since Luther's rise to prominence have been marked by a seemingly endless fission of denominations. The original three major branches of the continental Protestant movement against the Catholic Church, Lutheran, Calvinist, Anabaptist, were themselves the distinct theological groups that resulted from the first round of splintering shortly after Luther advanced his new theology. The mainline churches we know today have evolved from them, as did the Church of England, which arose in 1534 out of the ashes of King Henry VIII's acrimonious fracas with the Pope over the latter's refusal to grant the monarch a divorce from his wife, resulting in Henry's fateful departure from the Catholic Church. In fact, the Catholic Church in the early 16th century was in dire need of reform. Unlike St. Francis of Assisi, whose wise and brilliantly successful approach ultimately reformed a church that had, in his day, fallen into shambles on many fronts, Martin Luther chose a path of rebellion that not only failed to reform the church he once loved, but inflicted a massive and still suppurating wound of acrimonious division on the body of Christ. This does not in any way excuse or minimize the enormous damage caused by these Catholics who were themselves responsible for the corruption. Nor is it an attempt to blame Luther for the corruption that he had reacted so strenuously against. At the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church did in fact undertake the urgently needed ecclesiastical reforms that Luther had identified. This Catholic counter-reformation was a big step forward in correcting the problems that had hampered and weakened the Church's mission of saving souls. But the damage had been done. When I reflect on the Reformation, I take solace in knowing that, alone among all other Christian groups, the Catholic Church was always there, always on the scene, always present and accounted for, since the days of the apostles. What really caught my attention as I sifted through the details of Catholic history is something that I found impossible to explain away. In fact, I found it to be, for me at least, an overwhelmingly convincing indication of the truth of the Catholic Church's claim to being the church established by Jesus Christ. It's rare these days to hear a Catholic make the claim that the Catholic Church is the one true church established by Jesus Christ, even though that is the official belief of the Catholic Church, one that can be corroborated with compelling historical evidence. Rather, since the Second Vatican Council placed new emphasis on the importance of ecumenical dialogue with other Christian groups, this Catholic teaching has faded considerably in the minds of many. As a result, many Catholics have at best a hazy sense of the great drama of Christianity spanning 2 millennia. They may know that Jesus and the apostles walked the dusty roads of Palestine some 20 centuries ago, and they know that there are Christians today. But what happened in between then and now is largely a blank to many. If it can be demonstrated that Christ did establish the Catholic Church, then everyone on earth should be Catholic. I see this as the ultimate answer to the question, why be Catholic? I found in the Gospel of Matthew a series of biblical clues leading me inexorably toward the conclusion that the Catholic Church is the one true church. Each clue is but a strand in itself, but taken together, they form a stout rope of evidence that can more than heft the weight of the prodigious Catholic claim to being the church that Christ established. And we'll go into that tomorrow in terms of what is those biblical clues that he talks about in Matthew. We'll go into a little bit more greater detail of that. But I did want to leave you with another individual who came to the Catholic Church. His story is told in another book by Patrick Madrid called Surprised by Truth. You probably know him if you watch EWTN. His name is Marcus Grodi. He came into the Catholic Church. He, in fact, was in the seminary the same time as Scott Hahn was, in the exact same seminary. And his coming into it, Scott certainly had something to do with it. But ultimately what convinced him was the history of the Catholic Church. And this is what Patrick is talking about, is making sure that we understand that history. I'll read just what he has at the end of his chapter of coming into the faith. And this is Marcus Grodi. I think it's important that I mention in closing one more of John Henry Newman's insights that made a crucial difference in the process of my conversion to the Catholic Church. He wrote that to be deep in history is to cease to be a Protestant. This one line summarizes a key reason why I abandoned Protestantism, bypassed the Orthodox Church, and became a Catholic. Newman was right. The more I read church history and scripture, the less I could comfortably remain a Protestant. I saw that it was the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, that was established by Jesus Christ, and all other claimants to the title true church had to step aside. It was the Bible and church history that made a Catholic out of me, against my will, at least at first, and to my immense surprise. I also learned that the flip side of Newman's adage is equally true. To cease to be deep in history is to become a Protestant. That's why we Catholics must know why we believe what the Church teaches, as well as the history behind these truths of our salvation. We must prepare ourselves and our children to always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks for a reason for your hope. By boldly living and proclaiming our faith, many will hear Christ speaking through us and will be brought to a knowledge of the truth in all its fullness in the Catholic Church.
And can I just say, Deacon Don mentioned that Marcus Grodi is on EWTN. He actually was earned his living in ministry for the Protestant Church. He was a minister, and I guess a pastor. And so when he decided to become Catholic, when he realized that to be honest with himself, he had to come into the Catholic Church. It was very difficult for him in his personal life, professionally, financially, because he was giving up his livelihood. He was, many of his acquaintances and colleagues disagreed with him and didn't.
Even his wife.
Yeah. So it was in many respects, was not just as simple as perhaps it is for someone today, that comes into our, RCIA process. So as a result of that, he actually developed this ministry, which is called the Coming Home Network. And that actually is an outreach for people like himself who, are seeking and making that journey, God willingly, into the Catholic Church. And many of them are facing particular hardships, difficulties in one way or another. And so his program on EWTN, I think it's called Journeys Home, he actually interviews different individuals who have come into the church. And it's encourage you to watch that because you can learn a lot. I think in reading stories like his, other converts, is a great way because they all had questions and challenges. And, in their testimonies, they will, share with us how they overcame them, how they answered those. And so they may be some of the questions that you have. So if you've never seen his show, I would encourage you to just tune it in. I'm not sure what night it is. I think it's Monday or Tuesday evening.
Yeah, in the evenings.
If you just check their schedule, EWTN.com, you can go on, I think, and they have the schedule there. But encourage you to just look him up and he's also comes through as a very humble, just a very genuine, sincere individual.
Very gentle.
Yes, absolutely. So we are truly blessed that we have him and others like him
Patrick.
in our church, in our church today. Yes.
Yeah. So we encourage you to, as I said, want to learn more about the history of our church and being able to give that response for the reason for our faith, for our hope, as it says in 1 Peter. And look forward to being with you again tomorrow when we will conclude this particular chapter and go through some of those aspects of history. And then we'll talk as well afterwards about what ways you can as well become more involved here at St. Mary's Parish and wanting to learn more about your faith, Catholic faith. So we hope you all have a good Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
God bless.
God bless.